Something unexpected happened in England's white ball cricket, and for a long time, no one fully understood why the change worked so quickly. Records began to fall. Scores climbed at a pace that felt unnatural. Traditional caution disappeared, replaced by immediate intent. At the center of this shift stood Jason Roy, not as a loud revolutionary, but as a living example of a new idea taking shape. What you are about to hear is not simply the story of a powerful opener. It is a sequence of moments that explains how England stopped reacting to the game and started controlling it from the very first ball. Roy did not wait for conditions to settle. He did not build slowly or search for safety. From the opening delivery, he attacked certainty itself. This approach confused opponents, unsettled plans, and forced a complete rethink of how modern innings could begin. The significance of this change goes far beyond boundaries and strike rates. It altered expectations, reshaped team psychology, and introduced a philosophy that would define an era. Understanding Jason Roy is essential to understanding how England learned to hit first and why it changed everything. To understand how England learned to hit first, it is necessary to begin with Jason Roy himself. Before he became a symbol of England's white ball transformation, Roy was simply a batter searching for clarity in a system that did not fully know what to do with him. He did not arrive with the reputation of a traditional great, nor was he shaped by classical expectations. His game was raw, instinctive, and built on immediate impact rather than accumulation. Early in his career, Roy's style raised questions. He played shots that seemed premature. He attacked bowlers before rhythm had formed. To many observers, this looked like impatience, yet beneath the surface, something more deliberate was developing. Roy understood that modern cricket was changing faster than its traditions. Field restrictions, power plays, and defensive bowling plans created opportunities that cautious batting failed to exploit. He saw openings where others saw danger. Roy's rise coincided with a period of identity crisis in England's limited overs cricket. Results were inconsistent, confidence was fragile, and strategy often felt reactive. Roy did not attempt to fix these issues through speeches or leadership roles. Instead, he did something more influential. He demonstrated repeatedly that aggression at the start could dictate the entire narrative of an innings. His presence alone altered how bowlers planned and how fielders positioned themselves. What made Roy important was not just power, but intent. From the first ball, he removed uncertainty. Opponents were forced into defense immediately, and teammates fed off that clarity. Over time, Roy became more than an opener. He became proof that England's mindset could change. His approach challenged fear, replaced hesitation with purpose, and laid the foundation for a team that would no longer wait to react. It began quietly, without announcements or dramatic declarations. Jason Roy started playing his opening overs as if time itself was a constraint he refused to accept. While other openers focused on survival, Roy focused on disruption. He attacked good deliveries, not loose ones. He moved across the crease early, committed fully to shots, and treated the first 10 balls as an opportunity rather than a threat. To traditionalize, this behavior felt reckless. What made it unusual was not the aggression alone, but its consistency. Roy did not adjust his intent based on reputation, conditions, or match situation. Whether facing a new ball under lights or early morning swing, his approach remained unchanged. Bowlers quickly noticed that their usual probing lengths were ineffective. Defensive lines were punished. Containment plans collapsed before they could settle. Coaches and analysts observed that Roy's method created pressure before pressure was supposed to exist. Fielding captains were forced to spread the field early, disrupting long-held structures of limited overs control. Power plays, once viewed as phases to navigate carefully, became weapons. Roy treated them as statements. Teammates initially silently watched with uncertainty. A single failure could have labeled the approach irresponsible, yet Roy continued, refining timing rather than reducing intent. When dismissals occurred, he did not retreat. He adjusted positioning, shot selection, and awareness, but never philosophy. That refusal to compromise made his behavior stand out even more. Opponents struggled to categorize him. He was not reckless, yet he was never cautious. He did not chase momentum, he manufactured it. Slowly, England's dressing room began to shift. Roy's unusual behavior planted a dangerous idea. What if early aggression was not a risk, but a form of control? This question lingered after every innings. What began as individual instinct started to look like a blueprint. Roy was no longer just opening the batting, he was opening a new way of thinking. As Jason Roy's approach continued to defy convention, confusion grew around him. Commentators searched for explanations that would fit within familiar frameworks. Analysts examined technique, assuming a flaw would eventually appear. Coaches debated whether such intent could survive prolonged exposure at the highest level. The question was not whether Roy could score quickly, but whether he should. Something felt out of place, and many believed it had to be corrected. England's own setup explored obvious explanations first. Perhaps Roy's success was situational, dependent on flat pitches or short boundaries. Maybe bowlers had not yet adjusted. Others suggested that his early dominance masked deeper inconsistency and would collapse under sustained pressure. Each theory sounded reasonable, each one failed to fully explain what was happening. Opposition teams tried their own solutions. Bowlers went fuller, then shorter. Fields were pushed back early, then brought in aggressively. Roy responded by staying ahead of plans rather than reacting to them. He did not chase variations, he anticipated them. This created a deeper sense of unease. The usual levers of control no longer worked. Within England's camp, the tension was quieter but just as real. Failure would invite scrutiny not only on Roy, but on the direction the team appeared to be moving. Yet, even when dismissals came, something remained undeniable. Roy had already changed the tone of the match. The opposition was unsettled. The scoreboard had moved. Fear had shifted sides. Slowly, understanding replaced suspicion. There was nothing wrong to fix. Roy was not breaking rules. He was exploiting timing. He removed uncertainty before it could grow. By attacking first, he simplified decision-making for those who followed. England began to realize that the discomfort surrounding Roy was not a warning sign. It was evidence of evolution. What seemed like a problem was actually a transition. Roy was exposing how outdated assumptions limited potential. The attempts to correct him revealed more about cricket's hesitation to change than any flaw in his game. Despite the growing acceptance of Jason Roy's impact, one element continued to generate tension and debate. Roy remained fixated on the same principle: attack first, regardless of context. He did not adjust his intent for difficult conditions, high-stakes matches, or early losses of form. This unwavering focus became the central problem point of his story. If his approach failed at the wrong moment, it could cost England far more than a wicket. What made this fixation suspenseful was the lack of compromise. Roy did not seek balance through caution. Instead, he refined aggression itself. He worked on shot selection within power play fields, on reading bowlers earlier, and on committing fully once a decision was made. Yet the core idea never changed. The first overs were not for assessment, they were for domination. Selectors, analysts, and fans understood the risk. One prolonged failure could collapse trust in the entire philosophy England was beginning to adopt. Roy carried that weight every time he walked out to open. There was no hiding behind slow starts or safe contributions. His success or failure was immediate and visible. Opponents sensed this pressure and targeted him relentlessly. They designed plans specifically to break his rhythm early, knowing that removing Roy often felt like regaining control of the match. Yet, Even when dismissed cheaply, the damage was frequently already done. Bowlers had been forced to change length, fields had been spread, the psychological advantage had shifted. The fixation, therefore, became a test of belief. Was England willing to accept short-term losses for long-term dominance? Roy embodied that question. He did not chase security, he chased certainty. Certainty that proactive intent dictated outcomes more effectively than reactive caution. This problem point defined the era. England stood on the edge of transformation, and Roy's refusal to retreat forced a decision. Either the team would fully commit to hitting first or retreat back into familiar hesitation. There was no middle ground left. The first clear clue that Jason Roy was not simply a disruptive presence, but a structural solution, appeared in moments that were easy to overlook at first. It was not a single innings or a spectacular score that revealed the truth. It was the pattern that followed his starts. England kept arriving at strong positions unusually early, long before middle overs were meant to decide matches. Something fundamental was shifting. Opposition teams began altering plans before matches even started. Field placements in the first over changed. Bowlers abandoned traditional opening lengths. Captains spoke openly about surviving the first 10 balls rather than building pressure. These reactions were the first real signal that Roy's impact extended beyond runs. He was shaping decision-making on both sides. Inside England's dressing room, another clue emerged. Middle-order batters felt liberated. They walked in with clarity instead of urgency. The scoreboard already reflected intent. Roy's aggression reduced uncertainty for those who followed, allowing them to play their roles rather than rescue situations. This psychological shift was measurable, even if it was not immediately visible in statistics. Coaches began reviewing footage and noticed something critical. Roy's success was not random. His shot selection followed specific patterns based on fielding restrictions and bowler tendencies. What looked instinctive was actually structured risk. That realization changed everything. Aggression was no longer viewed as chaos. It became a tool. The clearest clue came when England persisted with Roy through failures. Instead of retreating, results stabilized. Team totals increased. Win percentages improved. Confidence grew. The system absorbed individual inconsistency because the intent remained consistent. At that point, the truth could no longer be ignored. Roy was not an exception to England's strategy. He was the evidence that the strategy worked. The first clue had revealed itself fully. Hitting first was not reckless. It was deliberate, repeatable, and transformative when trusted. The truth, when it finally became impossible to deny, reframed everything Jason Roy represented. England had not merely found a destructive opener. They had uncovered a strategic trigger that redefined how matches were controlled. Roy's role was never about surviving the new ball or setting a platform in the traditional sense. His purpose was to seize authority immediately and force the game into England's terms before opponents could settle. The big reveal was this: by hitting first, England removed choice from the opposition. Bowlers could not probe patiently. Captains could not wait for mistakes. Every plan had to be accelerated, and acceleration breeds error. Roy's aggression compressed time, shrinking the window in which opponents could apply pressure. That compression became England's greatest weapon. Data began to support what instinct had shown. When Roy fired early, England's win probability surged. Even if he did not score heavily, the psychological damage inflicted in the opening overs altered bowling rotations, fielding intensity, and tactical flexibility. Roy did not need to bat deep to shape outcomes. His impact was front-loaded and decisive. More importantly, Roy's success legitimized belief across the squad. Others were encouraged to play with the same intent because they had seen it withstand scrutiny. What once looked like individual bravado was now a collective identity. England stopped asking whether aggression was safe. They asked how aggressively they could act without losing clarity. This reveal marked a cultural shift. England no longer waited to understand conditions before committing. They committed first and adapted later. player. Roy's role exposed a fundamental truth of modern limited overs cricket. Initiative outweighs caution, and pressure applied early multiplies across an innings. Jason Roy was not the loudest figure in England's transformation, but he was the spark. The reveal was simple and profound. England learned that the fastest way to control a match was not by defending later, but by attacking immediately. That realization changed everything. Jason Roy's journey demonstrates that proactive intent can redefine an entire team's approach. He showed that success does not always come from patience or measured accumulation. Instead, clear purpose, decisiveness, and early initiative can set the tone for every phase of a match. By hitting first, Roy forced opponents to react, creating psychological advantages that extended far beyond individual runs. His career also highlights the value of trust. England's management allowed him the freedom to play his natural game, even when traditional wisdom suggested restraint. That trust created accountability. Players followed his example, and the team learned that structured aggression could be sustainable. Mistakes were no longer catastrophic. They became part of a calculated rhythm, reinforcing learning rather than triggering fear. Beyond cricket, Roy's story offers a universal lesson. Leadership and innovation require courage, preparation, and decisiveness. The permission to act must be earned internally, not granted externally. By committing fully to the first ball, the first over, and the first phase of the innings, Roy transformed England's white ball cricket, proving that initiative, when disciplined and deliberate, can redefine success.